Sam, I've got a topic of conversation that I want to bring to your attention that I think will ruffle a few feathers. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Controversial, is it?
Well, I'll let you be the judge of that. I think RPGs are a very unentertaining form of gameplay.
What do you mean? Like the most powerful weapon in the game. Usually you can one-shot a boss in one shot if you're using an RPG. Rocket-propelled grenade, right?
That is obviously what I'm talking about. Yeah, today is a review of all of the different military artillery fire that you can get in the real world on the black market. No, obviously not. Role-playing games. We're talking about role-playing games.
Role-playing games.
Yeah.
I find that very interesting that you in particular have mentioned this.
Why me in particular?
Because you've just been playing a role-playing game for the past few weeks, have you not?
Yes, I have, and that is the exception to the rule because that is the best game of all time.
Exception to the rule.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Good to know. Okay, so what is it about JRPGs, not JRPGs, about RPGs that...
Freudian slip.
That's a topic for another time.
Yeah.
What is it about RPGs that you find so aggressive or aggressive? Egregious. Egregious is the word that I'm desperately looking for.
Yeah, no. So look, obviously it's a bit tongue in cheek. I'm not saying that all RPGs are bad, but I just find the concept of RPGs a little bit unusual. Like I don't have a big experience with RPGs. Like I know there's some huge ones recently, things like Elden Ring and stuff like that I haven't played, but I've watched people play them, and I've watched because I've got nothing better to do with my time. Like and I recently started playing God of War. Would we class that as an RPG? That's an RPG, isn't it?
That'd be a Western RPG, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I guess. Well, does it count as an RPG? It's got RPG elements in it.
Okay,
but
so
this is an
this is
action
good.
Adventure game.
Right. So this is good. What do you categorize as RPG? Because I've looked up the top RPGs just so I can get a feel for the types of games that are on there, and God of War is in that.
Interesting, but in the most recent award season, God of War often was put across as the best adventure game or the best action game because there's a lot of in-the-moment stuff happening. Though RPGs can also involve more real-time combat. I guess what makes an RPG is the idea of traveling through a world, defeating enemies, collecting new gear, playing the role of this character, collecting new armor, new weapons, new guns, and there's a stat element to it, I think. At its core, I would say that an RPG uses equipment and leveling up in order to improve your character so that you can play the game better. Whereas if it's an action game, like something like Devil May Cry, you don't really equip anything, you just focus on the fighting. It's not about the story, it's not about the world, it's not about the grinding, it's just about...
Okay, so you've mentioned something there that I think is important, and that's that it's not about the story in that. So you're telling me in RPG, the story is important?
I would say oftentimes, yes, it's the main motivator. Like, you have certain quest marks that you travel through in order to get
But this is what I find really hard to get my head around, because, like, if I don't know, Hogwarts Legacy is the perfect example. I bought into Hogwarts Legacy because I'm a fan of the Potter world and the Potter universe, and I really loved the story, I really loved the narrative, and thought it was a great sort of thing to sort of experience as you go along. And I guess I'm sort of just being a bit naive, I think, when it comes to other games. But like when I've watched playthroughs of other games where they don't really have the set, they're just one-off stories, I haven't really rated them. There's a lot of just like battling generic monsters. There's a lot of just, we're going to defeat the Dark Lord, we're going to do this, and it's all like, people rave about like, oh, it's just an amazing game to play, but I'm sat there thinking, well, what's the story here? Like, is there any narrative? And if I wanted a good narrative, do I not just watch a movie or watch a series that does it in short form where it's actually paced well and I don't have to wait 10 years to battle through a level that's...
So you're wanting games then that are... If it's got a narrative and the narrative is the focus, then that needs to be at the forefront and it's maybe a shorter experience, but it's more streamlined. Whereas the idea with, I suppose,
I just no, because that takes away from me the fact that it's a game. I don't want to. If it's short, like if it's a game, I need to be able to play through it. Like I don't want to just watch something happen on screen and then I have to do some stuff every now and then just so I can get through to the narrative. If the narrative's that good, I want to watch it. So put it in a movie. If the narrative isn't important, then let me play some kick-ass games.
I'm so just like, what is this take? Like, oh, I don't want to have to sit and watch cutscenes. I just want to like do some cool gameplay, but I don't care what the story is. If I want to watch a story, I'll watch a movie instead. What do you want? If you want good gameplay, you've got to have like. There's gonna be a story. Like if it's an action game, if you're like a sword-wielding wizard or a gun-toting space marine, like there's gonna be a story that you're gonna have to get to eventually through these corridors of enemies you have to fight through, and that might feel really good. But that's just how games are.
Okay, so let me talk you through how I sort of came to this. Like obviously I haven't come to a conclusion because I don't really know what I'm talking about. But the reason this came up was because I was playing God of War and I didn't really enjoy it, to be honest, and I didn't really find it entertaining because I wanted to enjoy it. I went in but it's so constrictive in what you can do. Like you just have to go down the path that they sort of take you down. There's no way to sort of divert from the narrative effectively. You just
because it's more of an action game than a role-playing game.
Yeah,
I would say personally.
So maybe this is the problem. Maybe I don't like action games. Maybe I'm more inclined to...
Or adventure games.
Adventure games, yeah.
Have you played the Uncharted series?
No, I've seen a lot of the gameplay, and that has intrigued me, to be fair. It's more open world, right?
What you seem to have a case of, Will...
Actually, is it? Huh? Is it more open world? I get Uncharted mixed up with Fallout.
There are some bits in Uncharted. In Uncharted... One of the spin-offs, there was an open world-ish segment. Like for The Last of Us 2, there's an open world-ish segment. And I think the problem for you, Will, is you've had a bite of the fruit known as open world gameplay. Which is very involved, it's very dense, there's lots of stuff to find and to do in a good open world game. And now that you're going back to playing games that are more linear, and I don't think linear is a dirty word to use with these games. Because linear games can be good when the gameplay feels really good and when the story is really good. That's your God of Wars, that's your Uncharted.
Right.
And your Devil May Cries and things like that. You are put on a set path, you play the same levels, but you can approach the level in a kind of a way that you prefer. You want to use the axe, you want to use the chains, you want to use the shield, you pick your method, you play through as the developer intended. And that style of gameplay can be highly, highly curated so that the player is having as much of the director's vision presented to them at that time. So you walk into a room full of bad guys, the game director knows you can approach it in the way that he wants, but then when you beat them and get to the puzzle, it's like there is a solution, you can't kind of weasel around it. Open world games, ever since Breath of the Wild came out, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, have been chasing this high of massive amounts of discovery, massive amounts of freedom, and the story has then evaporated. So there's lots of vapid tasks to do where there isn't as much content or there's not as much side quests that have narrative purpose that actually feed into the great good. God of War, you do side quests that feeds into the main story. But with these other games, these big open world games, it's hard to write a coherent story for a game if your player can go anywhere they like. So this is why Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild are so popular, because the story is segmented and it's up to the player to glean meaning from it and make connections. Whereas games like Horizon Zero Dawn, it's this big open world, you can go anywhere, but you're story locked of having to wait until a certain marker comes up and go and do that particular quest. So I think the way you're describing it is now that you've watched and played Hogwarts Legacy, where a lot of the side stories are quite good independently.
Which is number 3 in the most played action RPG games ever.
It's massive. It's been a massive success. There's been over 12 million copies sold. So, you know, it is a game that people are wanting to play. And now that it's done gangbusters with its numbers and it's continuing to sell well, I think we'll probably see a lot more games of its ilk, a lot more of these open world games with lots to do, but the story is gated behind main story quests.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
I think
that
you do
that
like
definitely...
RPGs, but you like open world RPGs.
Yeah. Okay. But that seems a shame. I don't want to. The thing is, I don't want to close off to like all of these other great productions and stuff. Like I don't. But yeah, I think that is definitely what I liked about Hogwarts Legacy was that it. But I genuinely enjoyed the story, but just that it was so well thought out, and like you say, you can do lots of other things, and there are other tasks that link to the main story. There are lots of things that you can do, and you can sort of go down different paths and learn things at different paces. You don't have to have done certain stories, but it can help to do certain stories first. So there's a bit of option and choice and negotiation. But maybe it's just the fact that
I think you really like. Also, yeah, that is another thing. Like you have to kind of, for these big open world RPGs, if you're not invested in the world and like seeing or familiar with the property, then it is very difficult to get committed to it. So with Harry Potter, I guess there's lots of references to books and to history pieces and spells and stuff. So when you see that as a fan, you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. I like that.
Okay.
In Zelda, it was the same thing. It was references to past games and to past.
So like in Final Fantasy VII.
Yes.
That's the one that was the one that they remade that I played for a bit, right?
Yes, that's Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Yeah. I quite enjoyed that, like experiencing that at the beginning, but I quickly lost motivation when I got stuck and was like invested in the narrative, and then sort of got frustrated and hit a blockade, and it was sort of, I just haven't picked it up again because I was thinking, well, if I want to know the narrative, I can just go watch it. I'm stuck at this part of the gameplay, and it's a bit repetitive with the action and the sort of, I don't know, the fight sequencing.
The fights, yeah. Especially if you find like a certain rhythm to it, where you defeat the enemies and it's consistently working that way.
Yeah.
I think in those cases, if you're stuck on something, especially with RPGs in general, and you've enjoyed it up to that point, I don't think there's any harm in looking up a guide to just see what you.
Yeah, I know. I just hate doing it. Yeah.
So that's a you problem, man.
I know that is. Yeah.
I am very much in the gate. As I've gotten older, I was exactly the same up until I think maybe Kingdom Hearts 2, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
I first was like, okay, what I want to do is I love the way this game plays, but I cannot for the bloody life of me figure out how to solve whatever puzzle it was.
Yeah.
And so I looked at a guide, solved the puzzle, off I go.
Moved on.
I can now continue to enjoy this game that I've enjoyed to that point.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. That's just a
maybe
chip
be an
on my shoulder
interesting
that I need to get rid of. Yeah. Okay, you've humbled me a lot today. Can you leave me with an RPG to try that, I don't know, will either test the waters in a different genre or a different style?
This is something we can come back to maybe next week or next time.
Yeah.
We can ask, when you say RPG, you mean like a Western developed RPG, not like a Japanese role-playing game like where it's turn-based combat like Pokemon. You want like a...
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay. In which case, strong suggestions are Bloodborne.
Right.
PS4.
Yeah. Isn't that the prequel to Elden? Isn't that Elden Ring? Isn't that the similar?
It's the same developers. It's not technically a Western development.
Oh, I'm nervous about that because I've seen some of that gameplay as well, and it looks so grey and dark. I'm just like, I've seen it.
It's a great aesthetic, and that's just one part of it.
Okay.
Skyrim. If you've never played Skyrim, it's available on every console forever.
Okay.
And The Witcher 3. I would say.
Yeah, I saw that come up. That's done big things, hasn't it?
It's got a HD 4K patch coming out soon for the PS5, so now's the perfect time to get in.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on.